Hey everybody, this is T Fluid here, and I want to say happy tea drinking, everyone. I want to do a part two of the Iaso tea journey and my journey as to starting over. And I just kind of want to tell you guys a little bit in detail what I've been doing, what's been going on. Um, and I want to be as open and honest with everyone as possible with my journey. So the December 6th of 2016, I lost my mother. And like I stated in my first video, it's just been really difficult. But I just kind of want to give you a background as to why and where I stopped and why I stopped. And I also wanted to talk to you about like what happened as far as me falling off the bandwagon, my eating habits, and what I'm going to do to to get back in the saddle and resolve this. So as of what is it, September of 2015, my grandmother, meaning my mother's mother, she passed in September of 2015. And on the day of my grandmother's burial, my mom wasn't feeling well. Now, my mom, she's been dealing with the symptoms of this illness for, like, I want to say since 2013, 2014. She's been dealing with these symptoms for a long time because me and her, we talked about it. But anyway, so let me go back, and before I go into that, so um, she wasn't feeling well. So on the day of my grandmother's burial, she was just saying how bad she was feeling just in general. She just wasn't feeling well. So, she went and she laid down. So fast forward 3 days later, I get a call from my aunt who's telling me that my mom is telling me that she's not feeling well and she just generally just feel just worse than what she did before. So so my aunt goes and picks her up, and she picks me up, and we go out here to the hospital. We take her to the emergency room. They run all these tests on her, and come to find out, she had colorectal cancer. It was pretty much it was a tumor. To be a little bit more specific, it was a tumor in her rectum, and it was malignant, or it was cancerous. So, needless to say, my mom pretty much flipped out, and but it was worse than that because she was also like severely dehydrated, and her red blood cell count was really low. So they had to like put her in the ICU because she was like, when I say severely dehydrated, it was to the point of her, like they said, if she would have waited a few more days, she would have died. Then she would have died then. So they immediately they had to give her several blood transfusions. So she was out there for a couple of weeks in ICU, and then like another week or so on the regular floor. So she was in the hospital for a good little minute, and I was still doing my thing at the time. So it was so I was still able to work from home and still work my business and everything. So what happened after all of that? So my mom moved in with me, and she was still able to do a lot of things for herself. So fast forward to 2016, I'll say probably, yeah, early to mid 2016. We went through chemotherapy. No, I'm sorry. She went through chemotherapy and went through radiation, and she was doing well at one point. But then, as time went on, it got progressively worse, and and she just, and they was trying to have the surgery where they can remove the tumor, but the problem was is she was so thin and she lost so much weight. She was always a slender woman, but it was noticeable, like this was a different type of slender, so or slim. So we was trying to get her to pick up her weight so she could have the surgery, but she just wasn't picking up the weight. And after a while, hospice stepped in, and I knew what that meant. So when hospice stepped in, this is when things really took a turn for the worse. Well, let me not say that. It didn't take a turn for the worse at first. It was still pretty bad, but she was still able to manage and still was able to do a lot of stuff for herself. She was still able to go to the store, and because she always loved to shop, so she would go and do her little shopping, and I tell her not to buy me anything, and she'll still go and buy something for the house, and I'm like, really, Mom? So anyway, so what happened after that, she started to slowly, but at the same time started quickly declining. And I know that's an oxymoron, but it was just, and I can't really explain that, but it was like I noticed that it was certain things that she was able to do, and then it was just like I started seeing her where she wasn't able to do. At first it was like small little things, and at first it was like certain small little things that would slip her mind. It wasn't nothing big, and it was like, okay, that comes with age, and because at the time she was 58. So she was like, oh, I can't quite remember, but it'll come back to me. And sure enough, it did. And she'd be like, oh, yep, go and T, go do this, and I need you to go and do that, and blah blah blah, and can you fix me this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. But it got to the point where she couldn't take care of herself anymore, and I went from part-time caregiver, meaning I was able to part-time for me was going to the store and getting the stuff that she needed for those days that she wasn't well enough to go on her own. And, and I would cook for her. But then she never really cooked like that anyway. That's just her thing. But I would cook for her, and it was like, and I would go with her to doctor's appointments and stuff. And if I couldn't go, then my oldest son would go. After that, I went from part-time to being full-time, where I literally had to, make sure she was clean, to change her, help bathe her. We had a tech to come over to bathe her, but sometimes I had to help with that, and then the nurse, and if she was on the morphine pump, and it was really bad. So and I'm saying all of this, and then when I went into full-time caregiving for her, or as a full-time caregiver for my mom, it became so stressful. I couldn't keep on with the videos. I couldn't do my morning walks. I couldn't keep up with my business. I couldn't do it. And I had help around the house and everything, but it was just, the things that I know that I do well. I'm not saying that nobody else in the house couldn't, but they're not going to do it at the level of the standards that I have. It got to the point where I was getting only, like, if I was able to get about 4 hours of sleep. It got to the point where I was so exhausted. I wanted to sleep so bad, and it was hard for me to do it. And when I did sleep, I had to turn around and get back up in 3 to 4 hours. And then it got to the point where I had to sleep in my mom's room. I couldn't even sleep in my own bed anymore. just to make sure that she didn't hurt herself. And to make sure that she's getting her morphine, because of the boost of morphine, to make sure she doesn't feel any pain. And then my eating habits, like I said in my previous video, they went straight to hell. I started back eating the Oreo cookies. I stopped drinking my tea. I stopped working out. I stopped a lot of stuff to make sure she was okay. And I stopped, like, because it was actually, I have a couple of businesses that I run on my own, outside of helping my husband as well. But I had to stop because I couldn't do it. I could not give it, my full undivided attention. And not to mention, I didn't want to make those types of mistakes because I was so exhausted that I couldn't even function to the capacity that I know I could. And so I wound up gaining the weight back. I wound up eating, I was eating the chips. I was like doing the comfort food. And, when it got close to her dying and I knew she was getting ready to die, and I started grieving, and therefore I started eating, because that's one of my coping mechanisms, outside of like shutting everybody out. So I started eating, and I was just eating. And I'm talking about, I'll go in the kitchen and I'll cook and I'll make some type of pasta. And at one point it was just pasta central for me. So I started eating a lot of pastas, and I started eating a lot of chips again, and I started eating a lot of cookies again, and cakes. And then my neighbor, he's a sweetheart, but that man will send us like stuff, and I would not turn it down. My kids, they'll be like, "Oh, hey," I'm calling him Mr. X. So it's like, Mr. X sent us a pie over, and Mr. X, he sent us some cake over. And I would just go in there and just have and smash it, and I know I'm not supposed to have it, and yet I would do it, and it was just my coping mechanism. So I did fall off the bandwagon, and I just stopped doing everything that I was supposed to do. So now I'm here to tell you the things that I am doing. So I decided to start over again. And I'm not going to do the 30-day, well, I'm not going to put up the videos, let me say that, of the 30-day challenge. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start back with my tea, detoxing. I'm going to do what I like to call a master cleanse detox. So the tea is going to do what it does, but I'm going to do, because I've been doing this for a while, so I know what I need to do as far as doing the strong. I need to do a heavy detox on my body, because I have been eating so crappy, and I've went from where in my first video I was at 221 pounds, and I think I dropped down to 203 or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's in the previous video. And I dropped the weight, so and now I'm back up to 200, and actually a few days ago I was at 229, and now I'm down to 227, because I said I'm going to start back getting myself right again. Now that I'm still dealing with the grieving, the loss of my mom, but I have to get back on the bandwagon for my personal health. So I'm telling y'all this to say that, no matter what happens in life and where you feel as though you mess up, just start over again. I'm living proof of that. So with that being said, happy tea drinking, everyone, and peace.